something simple. And as we began to research into this and get greater detail and have strategic meetings with our colleagues back east, we really learned a lot about this technology. And to share something major strategic here is that the HaloB is going to be a system that we're going to be throwing an awful lot of R&D in. In fact, this is really kind of our first step on the control side of networks that takes us into 5G. The idea in 5G is that small cells are very widely dispersed, high numbers of cells and even in small areas, and because of that, and very low power cells, and because of that, you can't operate those kinds of things off a centralized EPC. You can't have all the traffic from thousands and thousands of small cells, all routing back both control and data plane back to some head end. It's just not efficient. It adds tons of overhead, and there's all kinds of other reasons. So the trend in 5G is actually to distribute the elements of the EPC as furthest to the edge as possible. And that's really what HaloB is about. So for us, this is a strategic direction for development of our EPC, while there remains actually a very major, very expensive $100,000 plus EPC that we have for some customers. The truth is, we are moving resources, R&D, to this platform, and over time, this will evolve into something pretty significant, while still being simple, SON-based plug and play. So with that set, I've got a lot of members of our team here that will be listening in. The webinar itself will be conducted by Cameron Kilton, our Director of Engineering Services, and Jesse Rash, who's our VP of Engineering and also General Manager of our sister company, FiSci. And to mention that, we have some of our colleagues from the sister company that will be sitting in on this event too, because clearly, since their program leverages BiCell's technologies, they need to understand this as well. We also have our marketing folks, our engineering teams, and Boone Sinicum and Katie Heil are also on the call and will be jumping in as needed. So with that, I'd like to turn it on over to Jesse to begin the actual presentation. Jesse, if you would be so gracious as to start, I'll put myself on mute.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
All right, so yeah, very excited. Seems we got a lot of people joining. So yeah, if you don't mind, let's kind of get to it. So essentially, we look at this as what are the current issues potentially, or challenges, I should say, with an LTE network. The biggest thing always centers around the core network, or the EPC. The main challenges there are, not only is an EPC very complicated to configure, maintain, it's also very expensive. It's traditionally available to the carriers. A lot of the functionality from that core is not really necessary for a fixed wireless environment. Typically where the core really shines is when it comes to the mobility side of things, the handovers. Again, all that complicated, expensive equipment's not exactly necessary for what a lot of the purposes operators are deploying for. There's also, of course, incredibly large learning curve required to make all of this happen. So knowing all of these things, and also kind of having the vision that we wanted to present this solution, this technology, make it more available to the rural operators, the fixed wireless operators, and then getting into other verticals, it was really necessary to reduce this learning curve and just make it as plug and play as possible. So that's where BiCell's designed this whole cloud core solution as a way to simplify everything to the point that it truly is plug and play. Some of the elements that I just wanted to highlight here so people know the very basics, and as you can see, kind of high-level design-wise and what those things do. So at the very basic level with an EPC, you have the MME. This is what's kind of responsible for all the authentication with the users. This is where the eNodeB and UE's control plane-wise signal to. And then you have the HSS, which is where essentially the database is for your subscribers. And then you have two gateways. You have the S gateway, which is the mobility anchor. This is what serves a large number of base stations. And then you have the packet gateway, which routes out to the outside network. Those are, all the basic things, and it's important that at least people understand those, what those elements are. So when we start discussing what does HaloB bring, you'll kind of see that a lot of this stuff is kind of removed or lightened. Okay. So again, kind of talking more about some of the challenges with the LTE architecture. Mainly, one of the bigger issues is the backhauls and making sure that those are as stable as can be. So being that, especially in rural environments, there's a lot of microwave backhauls. This can't always be 100% guaranteed. And not only that, even your internal backhauls are good. You have, no ability to control the internet, which is, when you're running the cloud-based EPC, that's just, some potential paths that could have issue. If the S1 ever was to disconnect, as anyone that has LT network knows, all the subscribers drop. So that's the kind of the big disadvantage with the LTE design and architecture. We've kind of resolved that for the most part, as far as adding some layer of redundancy by adding the MME pool. So this, I think, has helped drastically to the point that we almost never hear too much of any kind of S1 drops since introducing that feature. But, if there is issues, it's typically, internal on the microwave backhauls or whatnot. All right, as the design itself, again, it's very complicated configuration-wise. We talked about how you have to rely on all those S1 connections, and just implementing a core network into existing ISP network configurations and designs, it typically doesn't complement it very well. It has to be a layer 3 network, as there has to be a gateway for the traffic to reach. So for anyone trying to implement EPC on a layer 2 kind of network, it's complicated as it doesn't natively support it, and to do so, you do have to run some kind of tunnel over the top to make that work. So that's where HaloB comes into place. So now on to what does HaloB bring? What solutions does this actually provide and resolve? We have mainly, if we go back to look at the cloud core network, you'll see that we talked about those 4 basic elements. With HaloB, we essentially removed 2 of them for the most part. There's no more requirement for any gateway with the S gateway, P gateway, because with our solution, we have LGW. So we already have that kind of gateway user traffic rerouting built in. So we can remove those gateways, which those typically require a lot of processing power to run those. So we're able to remove those. The MME is a very light version that it only processes the signaling. And then you have the HSS, which is basically just downloading into a database the subscriber information. So with that, our solution's SoC based, so it was very important to not really add any overhead on the processor or have any large memory requirements. So it was kind of an engineering masterpiece to make all of this happen on an SoC based solution. So how the process works right now is we kind of take advantage of actually the benefits of all the cloud by being able to make it plug and play. By activating HaloB, enabling it, it doesn't remove or change any of the processes or procedures you're currently doing. You would still use the OMC, you would still use BOSS to activate SIMs, so the whole management process would stay exactly the same as it is today. The difference with HaloB is it just downloads your subscriber information into a permanent stored database. So you get the benefits of the cloud, but you get the stability and robustness of having the embedded core, to the point that you could even disconnect the Ethernet cable and all your users would still be attached. So you can't really have greater stability than that. Investment, of course, it's going to be much lower cost than going out buying your own core. And it, again, kind of provides even more reliability than having a local core, as there's no more external S1 tunnel. So that's kind of the big key in providing that level of robustness. It's actually incredibly simple, to the point that it's a kind of an on-off feature. There's really no configuration necessary for HaloB. You just simply turn it on or off. So you get all the plug-and-play ability. There's no complications with the configuration. And so this is kind of our solution to provide the reliability that everyone deserves. And it's also, as Patrick kind of mentioned, kind of towards the path of where 5G is leading anyways, by kind of getting away from the central core design.
So Jesse, this is a question that's come in that's worth, at this spot, kind of addresses, does HaloB work with third-party EPCs or with the buy-sells EPC? This is partly what I think Jesse's trying to explain, that this takes the place of the EPC. So maybe you could address that question a little more thoroughly.
Yeah, so there's two modes, and that's on some other slides, but we should explain that here too. So the current, we have this multi-mode that basically works with the cloud core today. So if you're deploying it with the current version that's out today, you would have to have the buy-sells BOSS and OMC, because that's where it's downloading your subscriber information from. There's also a standalone mode, which if you enabled this, it would allow you to import the MZs, your subscriber profiles. So if you do it that way, then you could kind of manually configure each base station. And in future, I know there's been discussions about developing APIs. So if you had your own solution, your own core network, you'd have to program that in. But it is really kind of its standalone. It's kind of decoupling from the core network in general, to the point that an EPC is not really required at all for this kind of solution.
Yeah, and we've thought long and hard, right? But when we first did our first kind of a phrase that Joshua Powell, who's probably on, hates, we said kind of the layer 2 emulation or something like that. When we kind of created our own little scheme of that, there were a lot of questions and concerns. Okay, that's not true layer 2, whatever. So the organization has thought long and hard trying to figure out the best way to really do that, to enable you to use your gear in a manner that you've always done. And basically it was decided that the best way to achieve that was through this method, because then we could also add in the benefits of all this other stuff we were doing and still provide true layer 2 through this. So the HaloB actually solves a number of different interesting technology issues wrapped around LTE in a fixed environment. It's a very significant engineering development, and something that no one else has anything remotely like it.
And then the last two notes is, you'll see the big ones that we kind of get requests for, that are the layer 2, like a true layer 2 solution. And then so we'll go on that. There's another slide that kind of goes over that scenario, so we'll discuss it in detail then. And then the multiple APNs, so that you can separate your voice traffic, management traffic, user traffic, or whatever you need. We'll have that being supported with HaloB in a future revision. So how does the process work? How does it actually download the subscriber profiles? It still takes advantage of the TR69 connection. So assuming you're not using the standalone mode, it would still take advantage of that connection to the OMC. So the base station, the OMC, the whole cloud core still knows which base station is associated to which operator account. So when your UE attaches to the base station, it's first going to look at its local storage. If the subscriber does not find its IMSI there, the base station is then going to do a query to the boss to then download that subscriber information. And it only searches within the operator's boss SIMs. Now, if that SIM's there, it's going to download it. And assuming that IMSI is activated, then the UE will be able to attach with the service plan associated with that subscriber. If there's no IMSI associated with that account, then it just simply won't attach. Okay.
Jesse, I have a quick question. I want to know what keyboard you use, because I'm sure it has to be a very industrial version, because it sounds like you're hitting it with a hammer.
Not typing right now, but yeah.
All right.
Okay, so this is to kind of expand on how does a layer 2 solution actually work. We've been developing very heavily using the ExLand to make this happen. In kind of the graph on the left, it looks a lot more simplified over the other graph, and why that is essentially the HaloB base station is going to be running the VXLAN server. Now, why are we selecting VXLAN? We've done many testing performance-wise using many different protocols. We found that VXLAN handles fragmented packets very well, to the point that it doesn't really have any performance drops versus other solutions, say VPLS or any VPN solution. There's a performance drop. So VXLAN kind of resolves that problem. But upcoming versions will have that baked in. So you can actually truly bridge from your network all the way to the customer's router and be able to accomplish what most ISPs have network design-wise.
And this, by the way, will be the first time that, as far as I am aware, that anyone has done this over LTE. There are other kinds of implementations, like Jesse said, with VPLS or otherwise. But in terms of doing it like this efficiently and everything else, I believe it's the first time.
Right. And you can still accomplish that if you installed, say, a VXLAN server somewhere else on your network, say at the NOC. It could be running, say, even on the same server if you had a software APC, say with BiCells or whoever. It's possible to put that centralized somewhere else. But it does, make a little bit more complicated wise, and it requires another configuration where with HaloB we are bundling that in. So again, I think everyone should see that our whole theme with our solutions are plug and play, and what's going to make the most simple design and configuration for this.
Yeah, Cameron, you've implemented many a full-blown EPC. Give me some color on how much time it takes to normally configure a regular EPC.
Sure. So I've certainly had my fair share of EPC configuration mechanisms, and they have their pluses and minuses. But with the direction that we're headed, particularly with distributed EPC architecture, which is really where the industry is headed as a whole. So some color around the overall configuration. A typical, even kind of a virtual based appliance could take a couple of days to really get to operating functionally from end to end. If you get really good at it, you could probably do it in a full day. But for those that are first getting involved, plan for a few days to get the configuration and testing, and of course your own parameters around acceptance testing.
So this page was kind of designed to show how to configure HaloB. There wasn't really anything to it. You'll see it's a pretty blank slide for the most part, but this just kind of proves that it's really an on-off parameter. You either enable it or disable it. You'll see the grayed out section for mode. Centralized mode is the one that is currently supported as the only option. And that's what uses the Cloud Core, the OMC, the BOSS. But the next version will let you choose standalone mode, where you can just simply import the profiles you want. You'll notice on the left, the status info page, it looks slightly different. You'll see that basically the MME and IPsec, all those fields are kind of removed. You'll just see HaloB status is enabled and cell status active, and OMC status. Those are the three main ones when you are using HaloB. So here's just highlighting some of the major features that are upcoming roadmap-wise. Standalone mode is coming in the next version. Currently, anyone that's running HaloB right now is part of the pre-trials before this is all launched commercially, is running version 2.2. And standalone mode, we're looking at next month for that version coming out. The following month, around April-ish, we'll have charging. Charging will allow you to, depending on your billing methods, that just lets you charge by data usage. So you can actually measure, monitor how much traffic's being used, and you'll have the ability to bill based on that, or even limit subscribers, and you'll have more functionality there. Following that, I don't have concrete timelines for version 3, but that would soon follow, and that's where we're going to see a lot of the fun features with being able to have the multiple APNs, so you can have essentially the multiple IP addresses using different VLANs to each of your subscriber. ExLand for the layer 2, that will be included in that version, as well as mobility. So if there was ever a need to use handsets or handovers, those kind of things, that's going to be supported in that version as well.
Yeah, and notice something about too the charging. It's a little, it's a little more significant than you might realize. Remember, when you look at these things, keep an eye on towards where things are headed or expect to be headed in the future. And in the 5G world, which again is right now a marketing term because there is no single technology that's really 5G. It's more of it's more of an idea of being very, very close to the small cell, close to the user, and something in the area of a gig plus of capacity, right? So there's an idea and expectation that as you get to those kinds of capacities, that some operators will shift to a plan that incorporates charging-based service potentially. And the idea is we want to make sure that should that happen, your system will have the tools to to take advantage of those trends. Again, it's just one of those things that we want to put in there so you have that option.
Terry White asked about layer 2 availability. Yes, the actual release version is likely not going to include that. That's going to be probably a few months out.
So you can, I think, go to the next slide as we're taking questions and we can talk. So Boone is about to jump in here. So Cameron, make sure Boone has the ability to unmute himself. But I'll make a statement here. So we had a run through of this morning. And after this, I said, okay, now we have to have a statement about, how they go ahead and order this thing. So I told you guys online that I wanted HaloB to go live at the end of January. And then we said, okay, after the partner event. And the response I got on the call was, well, maybe right after WISP America, everything be ready. And I said, no, we'll take orders on it now. I don't give a darn if the systems are ready to be able to deliver, turn on the features immediately for you. I at least want to be able to get people in the queue. So, that said, Boone will make a statement, but no, it's my executive call to go ahead and at least take on the orders. And if you have any gripes about our ability to unlock that feature or to deliver that feature very quick in the beginning, that's all on me, not my team or anyone else. But in the background, they're working to get the system to be efficient. So I think they can have it delivered within, I think, 24, 48 hours or something like that. Initially, it won't be quite that fast. So with that said, Boone?
Yes, so...
See, I took all the heat off you.
Thank you, Patrick. We have created SKUs for HaloB, 2 different SKUs, single and packs of 10. The partners, our district partners, have those in their system. So I just called them after today's our run call, and they are ready to process pre-orders for HaloB.
Okay, is that also resellers too?
Yeah, well, resellers, we'll work with the distributors and resellers. So, but yes, we have all of the part numbers established. We have the procedures in which the partners will process the order.
Right. So to be clear, everyone, you just go to your normal person to whom sources you your gear, and you place your order. So again, it's going to take a little bit at first. One, the thing we got going on right now is overseas. It's a spring festival, which frankly the entire country over there shuts down and celebrates. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of a pain in the butt for us, but here's the good news. They don't shut down at Christmas. They don't shut down at New Year's. They don't shut down at Easter. They don't shut down at 4th of July. They don't shut down at Thanksgiving. So they don't conform to our holiday schedule. So when we have our holidays, they're up and at 'em. So it actually works out pretty well. It doesn't generally slow things down. In this case, it will slow things down a little bit. But if you bear with us, we'll get those things to you as quickly as possible. So I think the intent here now, good job, guys. We've got that down to half an hour, was to allow you guys to go ahead and do questions, do them via the chat. I think Rick, Cameron, Boone, me, and Jesse, Ronald, or anyone else that wants can maybe go ahead and begin to answer. But I would like, who do you want to? Cameron, maybe you can moderate the Q&A here. You might want to scroll back a little bit to make sure we've covered some of those that I've seen come in through the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Most recent question, I'll kind of start and work my way back up through. I think we've answered most as they've been coming in. And to address Matt, Double Radius says they have nothing related to HaloB. They probably do now. Boone keeps a pretty good control of those guys. So now that we've had our official webinar, you can probably expect a little bit more information.
Yeah, and remember, some of the stuff has to trickle down to the line guys, gals at the at the phone, at the desk, and at the phone. So Boone works through his his counterparts over there, and then it's up to them to trickle down that information through their organizations. Boone, if you've got any comment on that, you're welcome to make it.
That is correct. The operations folks have this information, Matt. It just, they've been waiting for our guidance for full release. So just because your salesman might not have that information doesn't mean the organization does not. So bear with us. As Patrick mentioned, he made the executive decision to share the release and pre-order for operators just this morning. So, but doesn't mean that our channel partners have not received this information.
Thank you, Boone. So another question that just came up was, how does this HaloB and obviously the upcoming of SaaS CBRS model pricing, I assume that's going to have some downward effects. So yes, how we are handling the SaaS is everything works through domain proxy using the OMC mechanism. So for those with operation and soon to be CBRS band, you will need to integrate with the OMC system to be able to do that. Coming forward, for those of you who still want even more stuff out of the cloud, the OMC BOSS system will be available as a product that will tie back to our system for the SaaS operation. That's a little bit further down the line, as obviously CBRS kind of finishes up where it needs to be. Does HaloB run on the eNodeB? Yes, it does. Rick had already answered that, and yes, you have to upgrade.
Well, it's you're not really upgrading the eNodeB so much as you're upgrading a specific piece of firmware, much like a patch. Yep. So you know, it's not the entire thing. It's just you're upgrading
it's a software update.
Yeah, an update for a specific feature. Yep. So I have a question, Cam. We've seen some questions before about okay, where does that data reside on the eNodeB? And okay, you can disconnect the Ethernet port, but what happens if the eNodeB loses power? Does the base station, you know, lose all its connections and information of the attached of the MZs?
No, the base that is stored in the hard memory of the eNodeB's database.
So repeat that again so everyone is clear exactly this point, because this is actually it's a pretty big deal. Again, trying to highlight these things that kind of make us special other than the simplicity, but this is kind of cool.
Sure. So just to recap Patrick's question is, say if you have an uplink outage towards the cloud, whether it's your own or Mother Nature or anything else, or a power failure of the eNodeB, if that eNodeB comes back online, it will already have its previous database. And everything will continue to operate correctly.
Cool. Jesse, did you have any comment you wanted to add on there?
Nope, he covered it pretty well. So yeah, it's firmly stored, so that's what matters. So yes, reboot of the base station is not going to affect that.
And next question I saw here is we have, does it cost me for the HaloB update? So yes, HaloB is a feature update, and it is, I think, $249. Boone, please correct me if I'm wrong, for a single unit, and for a 10 unit.
That is correct.
$19.99. Yep.
So here's another question that I know some people had asked previously. So we'll do this one for Jesse. So Jesse, when you turn on the on and off switch basically and you activate the HaloB feature, what else do you need to change in terms of your behaviors and how you're managing and interacting with the buy-sell system?
Zero. That's the beauty. You don't do anything. It does all of that automation in the back end.
Okay, so the way you do anything else, you continue to do normally. Any kind of queries you do, working inside the BOSS system to deal with your subscribers, nothing you do operationally changes. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, that's pretty cool.
So Jesse, there was a question that just came in. They're coming in really fast now. How will the speed, latency, performance be? Will it be exactly the same or possibly better?
Yeah, there's been no really overhead. Not much of anything's added with all of this. That's part of the great engineering that went into this. So performance-wise is exactly the same. I know that future-wise, they would probably look at potentially decoupling the packet gateway, but that's something for the future that, we don't have enough info to discuss on. But depending on how much throughput right now on a base station, there's not enough throughput to, be concerned of as far as how much data is going through it. But, when you get into the higher throughputs, that's when, we might look elsewhere. But right now, the performance is not impacted.
Yeah, and I would even add that since we already break out the control and data planes, we already achieve, better performance, I think, than most LT systems on that front anyway.
The attach process, I would suspect, would be a little bit quicker, but otherwise, I think your performance is going to be similar.
So there are a couple other questions that have come through. One, I think, go back a little bit further. Cameron, maybe I'll scroll. I have the ability to scroll, but whoa, that's too much. It was the idea that this HaloB is for larger operators, and actually nothing could be further from the truth. It's for any operator. Really, I don't think the scale of the operator necessarily matters, especially as you go to a more distributed sort of infrastructure architecture in the small cell world. So the idea there is to drive down as much control as local as possible. But here, it just happens to benefit the small operator, I think, so acutely well because A, it doesn't change anything you do operationally. B, to implement it is literally kind of flipping a switch, which couldn't be any more simple. Once the software is loaded onto the base station, and C, it doesn't require you to have a full-blown EPC. So inherently, it's absolutely optimized for the smallest of WISPs, not just good to have for the larger ones.
Perfect. Now there's another question that's come in. Will it affect HaloB if a UE is connected to a different eNodeB? So I'll kind of give a quick demonstration verbally. If you have a base station or multiple base stations on the same site, and you happen to lose one for whatever reason, backhaul, power outage, etc., just failure, the UE will detach from its current connection and it will look for something new. At that point, if it's never been to that eNodeB before, it will then go to the cloud for its information. If it has been to that eNodeB before, it'll immediately attach.
Yeah, and there was another question here that we should, I want to reiterate out loud because it's one that's come in several times. So let's say you have to RMA or whatever an eNodeB or gets some act of God takes the thing out, and you had a HaloB implementation on that eNodeB. Yes, that is transferable. Once you bought it, it's yours. It may just be software, but it's yours. And there is not an ongoing cost to maintain your HaloB. It's your product. Once you buy it, it's yours.
Cameron, can you and Jesse address that question about outbound information regarding billing and SNMP for third-party AAAs?
Searching for that one.
It was at 237. Anwar Marachi.
Okay, so I mean, that's not, I don't think it's like HaloB specific on the SNMP part, right? That's still being developed for the base station. So yes, SNMPs, that is one of the features that should be upcoming here soon. Now the AAA part, third parties, the billing, right now there's obviously integrations with API with the BOSS, so that happens, if you're using multi-mode right now. So if HaloB is downloading information from BOSS, there's an API for that today, which allows you to integrate with third-party billing. For APIs directly in the with HaloB, then those are actually still in the works. But if using Cloud Core, then we're good there.
Great. So moving on to some additional questions. Other ones. You have multiple E and B. Do I need a HaloB for each? Yes. Each eNodeB requires its own feature upgrade. And moving on, said another one was, shouldn't the pricing change for a user wanting to use HaloB as a backup with the Cloud Core? HaloB is full of feature sets well beyond the backup to the Cloud Core. So it is designed to be much different than just thinking of that. That is one feature of many that is coming. Moving on to Garth's question. Garth, you would ask if HaloB comes with one APN and the future will support two. What about added ones for voice video? The plan is to be able to support many APNs for various reasons, particularly as it pertains to the mobility support and handoff. So you'll be able to do not so much APNs for voice and video, but you'll be able to do QCI control, so you'll have to be able to prioritize that traffic end to end.
I see, as I see some of the pricing questions coming in hard and fast, I will say something. If you have So we've set it up to do either single purchase or basically a pack of 10, which, you know, could deal with what you got already or what you're anticipating, perhaps. And I think when you do the pack of 10, it's like a 30% savings or something. I forget. No, it's something pretty significant, 25%, whatever it is. But there's a couple of you that have several dozens of deployed base stations out there. If that's one of you or that describes you, please feel free to contact Katie and Boone independently, and we're happy to work through and take that up as a kind of a case-by-case unique situation. The intent here isn't to drop this on everyone and have it be this huge profit engine. The idea of this is just something that really helps us evolve our system, bring in a whole lot more features, but it's definitely not what you would consider a cash cow or anything like that.
That's a good point to add to Patrick. So as this continues to develop, we're calling it HaloB, but the architecture is distributed EPC, which is where the big boys are going. And it's a very well-played design. It's well vetted. It's practiced heavily now. And that's where we're deciding to put a lot of our R&D efforts into. So for those who have a lot of questions and want to learn more about HaloB, I certainly encourage you to do some research just into distributed LTE networks and distributed EPC. That will help color in a lot of the blanks.
Yeah, especially if you start pricing out what even distributed looks like in most cases. I think you'll see a very substantial difference in what we're doing here, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Patrick, you want to address Butch's question?
Remind me, what's he asking?
Will HaloB support a new local EPC?
Well, Butch, I think the point is, and you might have missed it early on, is HaloB becomes essentially a local. The idea is, originally, when we started this thing, I launched a North American subsidiary back in February 1 of 2016. And 5G wasn't really talked a whole lot about then. It was, people were beginning to kind of mention it. But over the past couple years, past 2 years, the activity and development towards those kind of technologies and what that architecture is going to look like has really kind of begun to gel. So when we first started this group, we always knew we were going to do cloud for a number of different reasons. One, because it's an advanced way to do it, because we separate the control and data planes, which is something that a lot of vendors are trying to get to at some point in the future, because there's some serious benefits to that. But at the same time, there was still a lot of wide use of centralized EPC, not necessarily local, but centralized. And I think sometimes we interchangeably use the term centralized and local when really they're not always the same thing, or at least one is a subset of the other, local being a subset perhaps of centralized to a certain degree. But typically these EPCs have come in these big centralized multi-server things, and we do have them. We actually are shipping them to a couple customers here, and one of them just paid I think it's $115,000, and it's a couple servers. It comes with 50 gig of capacity, supports over 1,000 base stations. Did that describe any of you guys yet? I don't think so. So the idea in that particular case was they do need centralized because they're not doing your normal basic internet sort of stuff. But looking at where technology was going and where these networks are going, we see it's trending more towards local, but not just local, but also local and distributed. So the more we got into HaloB and the more HaloB developed, it began to make sense that, okay, we can actually do this, and HaloB can ultimately evolve into essentially a full local distributed per eNodeB EPC. And that's where the design architecture is headed for this. So you say, can it work with a local EPC or with our local EPC? The idea is our local EPC or our full big EPC is largely being rolled into this kind of product. I probably didn't explain that really well, and I'm probably going to have to do that another 20 times over the next couple months, especially at WISP America. But I think that's the best I can do for the moment.
Yeah. And I'll add some more to that on what Patrick is talking about. So a lot of the driving factors behind the local is because of some cloud infrastructure concerns that obviously we are taking very seriously and addressing. I will further add that because of this design in HaloB and the way it's working, we have decided as a team to productize the OMC and BOSS platform. So that will actually be something that you will be able to, as an operator, put in your own cloud if you so choose, or put on your own physical server as you choose as well. So that is something I'm sure you'll hear more information about in the future.
Yeah, so there, I can hear the head shaking on a couple of you guys. It's probably Brian, Joshua, a number of you guys that might be out there. So is there a little bit of dancing on my part in this question? Hell yeah, absolutely there is. So because, we've been talking about local and centralized EPC for so long, and the truth is, yes, our strategy has shifted on that. Does it make sense to shift? Absolutely. Do we look a little bit like an idiot because our strategy shifted? Yeah, maybe, but you know what? Things evolve over time, and this is really what makes sense. So yeah, what we told you in the very beginning, there would probably be available in terms of a full centralized EPC. It's just not going to happen for us in the WISP market, but that's not a bad thing. It doesn't really make sense anyway. And once I fully understood this solution, I understand the rationale, and I'm kind of excited about it. So, but yeah, is there a little bit of dancing and trying to finesse that answer so I don't sound too stupid? Yeah, of course there is. So, in the interest of full candor and always laying it out there, absolutely. So I'd rather get that out there on the table, and you guys can have fun with it if you like. But I think once you experience it, you'll appreciate this is probably a much better approach. But it doesn't foreclose on your ability to do something else. You're perfectly welcome, and always have been, to either exclusively use the cloud or go to a third-party implementation or whatever, right? So those options still exist. They've always existed. This is just another way to do it.
Most important thing to note is you can't get any more local than an embedded EPC. The guys who want local EPC, we're putting it right there on the tower where it needs to be.
True that, Rick. Okay. Is there anything else that we've missed substantially here, guys?
No, another question just came in. Garth had just posted regarding the cloud EPC. Any update on when the last EPC update, which was to have redundancy for the HSS, was rolled back, going to be rescheduled? So tentatively, this is scheduled for March 1st for the next update, and you'll see some announcements on that. But since you're here, call it. You heard it first.
There have been several operators doing some beta testing on HaloB with phenomenal results. Some of them are on this webinar, but more to come on that.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point, Rick. As a matter of fact, those of you that have been on beta, of course, as part of our beta program, we have you execute NDA. I hereby publicly say you are freed from your ability to talk. You're welcome to talk about your beta experience with HaloB, as you see fit. Tell the truth. That's the way we prefer it. But there is one guy on here, and I did see him on earlier, who has had it for, I think, the better part of 4 months, who's really been the one, I think, experiencing it under alpha conditions, but in a very high-profile network, and I think it's actually worked out pretty well for him. Really what's been mostly developed since is kind of the interface portion of it. The functionality itself was kind of done early on. But again, those of you running betas, you know who you are. You're welcome to talk about it if you like on the BISALS operator support group or inside the user forum.
I'd like to address Tim's question from earlier about the ExLand. It seems he's familiar with that kind of setup. So yes, if there's a case where you have a requirement for layer 2 from one user on one sector to a different one that's on a different base station, then there would have to be a centralized kind of ExLand server. But you know, if you don't have that requirement to layer 2 between subscribers, then that's not necessary.
Yeah, that slide deck will be, we decided we are going to make that available for download. I think Savannah, she maybe has a plan for that. Savannah, you're welcome to come off mute and answer that question. In addition, it will be on YouTube. But Cameron, I thought we had told her she could get it up there to be downloaded. But we may request your contact information to do that, simply because, you know what, if a competitor is going to be downloading my stuff, I'd kind of like to know, or whatever it is. But Savannah will have a process for that.
Are there any other questions?
Doing pretty good time-wise here, and thanks everyone for pitching in.
That Joe Floshy has a question. Will we be able to have HaloB installed before the next upgrade of the core, which is scheduled March 1st, if we order quickly?
Oh,
that's a good question.
That might be a strategic reason to wait on the upgrade.
Jesse and Cameron, you want to talk out loud on that one?
It's actually a OMC upgrade that needs to take place. The OMC is what is used support-wise. So for OMC needs to be supportive of HaloB. Right now, anyone that's beta testing the HaloB software has been using the secondary OMC, which already has the HaloB function enabled. So it's actually going to be an OMC upgrade that takes place, which is somewhere towards end of month that we're looking at doing that. So yes, it's of course possible for you to install, you know, and use the HaloB for any beta operators, but they do have to use a secondary OMC to kind of manage it. So it's not as friendly as you have to jump to a different OMC just to manage HaloB base stations. So obviously the commercial one's going to be upgraded. And once that happens, then any HaloB base stations can just use commercial OMC.
Yeah, so there's, you know, when you productize something, there's always a lot of moving parts. And in spite of your best efforts, you know, when you're trying to cook the 7-course meal, not everything comes out exactly at once. And maybe we need to do, of course, we always need to try to work and improve on that. To that said, Sharon also has a series of a bit of documentation, including the installation guide and I think maintenance guide or whatever it is for HaloB, and there is a beta version of that as well. There will be a little bit of information there updated relative to what Jesse just mentioned in terms of shifting from the kind of the beta OMC that's in use for this to the regular OMC, which needs to be upgraded to accommodate HaloB. And that piece of the documentation also needs to be added to the user guide that's actually been published under limited kind of terms to beta users. So that material is ready too, and we'll try to get those kind of things out at the same time.
So just to be clear, we're actually talking about two different upgrades. We're talking about one upgrade which inserts the HaloB function into the Cloud Core OMC. But the other upgrade that I think was scheduled at March 1st is to add secondary HSS to the Cloud Core platform. So two different upgrades, don't confuse them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that secondary HSS is, if you guys remember, one of the last issues was, and that was a last missing piece of operational cloud redundancy. We've already have the multiple MME pools, East and West, and you know, BOSS and OMC on different servers. And this is the last element of that, which is the redundancy diverse servers for the HSS. So that's something that ultimately guys should be pretty happy about. So funny thing is, come roughly around March 1, a lot of people may decide, you know what, I don't need HaloB because with redundancy at MMEs, redundancy in your BOSS and your OMC, redundancy in the HSS, the cloud is so darn stable that, you know, I don't need it. That's a call you'll have to decide for yourself. We just want to give you the tools to make, you know, the best decision for your organization.
Yeah.
But to add, don't forget,
it
has many other features.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I always have to remind myself on that. So good point. Rick, you were going to emphasize that, so go ahead.
Yeah, HaloB is an option. You don't have to buy it. You can continue to use the cloud core. What it does do is it basically eliminates any possibility of an S1 failure, whether it's your backhaul link, wireless backhaul links, or piece of equipment in your NOC or whatever. If it has HaloB on it, you have an internet connection to it, your customers are still going to be online, whether you have a failure or not.
Right. In addition to all the other, in addition to all the other stuff it brings. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. There's a couple other questions. Okay. Thank you. Someone said something nice, but I think they said it to me privately, so I'll leave that one alone. Okay, so I think we're good. Is there any other last minute questions that you guys, team, that you see that we need to address here?
Just know that we're going to be pushing the R&D team to bring out the multiple APNs and the ExLand just as quickly as we can get them to do.
So hopefully we see many or most of you in a couple weeks in Birmingham at WISP America. We're really looking forward to that particular event. Some of us don't have to go too far, so that'll be kind of easy, and they haven't done one really in the Southeast before. So hope to see you there. We hope this is informative. You'll find this on our YouTube channel, so please feel free, if you need to refresh, to go up there and look at that. Thank you so much for joining. It's amazing that basically 100 of you plus stuck with us for largely the whole thing. Thanks also to my team for your assistance, Jesse, Cameron, Rick, Boone, Katie, for getting this thing set up. And thank you also for the Fireside guys for joining, and I'll talk to you on our company meeting in about an hour. So have a good day, everyone, and please feel free to ask additional questions if they come up on the Buy Sales Operator Support Group. And we'll talk to you later. Thank you.